Welcome into another episode of Home Field Advantage, first of 2024, our first of season 6. My name is Will Highland. You will be listening on January 7th, 2024. Hope you're all having a great start to this year, wherever you may be across our great country or our great land. And from Big Sur to the Big Coast here in Maine, I'm happy to have you here in your cars, trucks, SUVs, planes, workplaces, iPhones, laptops, however you're listening or watching. Happy to have you here. Sorry for the bumbling entry. I'm out of practice. It's been over a week, almost two. In fact, I think it's been 2 full weeks since I did a podcast for you all live and on our YouTube channel and whatnot. And it's been a long time. And I hope you all had a great holiday season. I hope you had a happy new year. I don't know how long you can say happy new year for. It's January 7th. Um, I would say that this would probably be the last day that you can say it because you're 7 days in at that point. I think that the year's about 2% over by the time you get to a week into the year. But nevertheless, I'm glad to be back with everybody. Started off 2024. I was very sick. I missed the 5-year anniversary of the show. I got sick on New Year's Day, was sick for a few days. It was horrible. I had COVID last year. It was worse than COVID for me specifically. Um, and uh, and I know that's not the same for everybody, but it was just how it was for me. So missed the 5-year anniversary of the show because Wednesday the 3rd, which was now 4 days ago, would have been the 5-year anniversary of the launch of Home Field Advantage. So I missed that. Was pretty bummed about it. But here we are. Hope you're checking out the new album artwork we have, or podcast artwork, whatever it's called these days. Updated that as well for season 6, and we've got a lot in store for you. It's going to be really fun. We're going to have more guests and more shows. I think next week we'll try and do an NFL playoff preview with Diesel and Cam. Fingers crossed that that can happen. Um, and likewise, we're just going to be plugging forward into the year. I think there's going to be a lot of times for predictions and prognostications for the year, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the first place I wanted to start, sports wise, uh, was uh, with the college football playoff recap. Um, and and New Year's Day, I was like not feeling great by the time Texas and Washington played one another. But I didn't watch a lot of that game. But I did watch a lot of Michigan and Alabama. And what I can say definitively, and this is something that I ended 2023 talking about, the college football playoff semifinals were electric. I want more of that. I didn't watch a lot of the bowls. There was apparently a bowl at Fenway at 11 a.m. in the rain on a Thursday. Not great scheduling there. There was, some bowls. The Pop Tart Bowl was cute. But honestly, guys, I think we can all agree that the best bowls are the ones that have these big implications. And it might, in this case, it's the implications for the playoff and the national championship. But in other implications, it's that, you've got two heavyweight schools with something to prove. I think Georgia obliterating Florida State. I'm not going to get into Florida State again because that makes people angry. But we saw a Georgia team that believed that they were among the best in the country, and believed they were snubbed, and decided to show it on the field against the Florida State team that had a lot of opt-outs. That's the excuse I heard, right? But you have to make the bowls mean something, right? I thought Florida State, they might feel slighted. They might say, well, the regular season is apparently meaningless, so we're going to make this bowl the most meaningful thing. But here's the thing. If the bowls don't have a playoff implication or some sort of big incentive for the participants, then they're going to look out for their draft stock and their transfer portal. So that's a whole nother conversation in college sports. But I think what we can take away from the semifinals is two things. Number one, like I said, I want more of that. I want more meaningful bowl games, and we're going to get that with the expanded playoff. The second thing I'll take away is the committee made the right choice. Those are two very good football games, right? If Jalen Milroe follows, Alabama wins that game. Um, Hold on, I'm having some technical. All right, here we go. If Jalen Milroe follows his block, Alabama wins that game. Right? That's just the nature of what I see there, right? I saw a low snap. First of all, if there's a better snap and he follows his block on that option RPO, whatever you want to call it, I think Alabama wins that game, or at least ties that game. Look, Blake Corum was having a hell of a night, so who knows? I think he was sort of taking over. He sort of took over the last 4 minutes of that football game. But look, Michigan almost bottled it, right? They muffed the punt. I saw in 26's eyes, that player, number 26, as soon as they panned to him and he was getting ready to catch that punt, I was like, he's going to muff it. And that's exactly what happened. They were so close to getting a safety there. But those games were electric. And then if Quinn Ewers, I'm a big Quinn Ewers fan, if he, follows through a little better and throws that ball a little harder, then I think Texas scores a touchdown right there and wins. So those games were electric. They were what they were supposed to be. They were between great teams that deserved a chance to win. But I think what might get lost is that Georgia is truly the team that got snubbed. Georgia hadn't lost in 2 years. They lost a neutral site game to Alabama, to a rival that, they've gone back and forth over the years. But that's the consequence, right? That's the consequence, is they can only take 4, and that's why we need to have it expand. Because the games were great. Look, Bo Nix, I'm going to talk about this for a second too, real quick, while we're on the subject. Bo Nix in Oregon, going out there with a huge win over Liberty, right? Bo Nix did whatever he wanted to do in the first 3 quarters, so much so that Dan Lanning took him out of the game, right? Like at that point, the game was won. Bo Nix didn't have to play in that game. Bo Nix was going to be a first-round pick, probably at worst a high second, no matter what, whether he played or not, right? Bo Nix played in that game. Jaden Daniels didn't play in his game. Caleb Williams didn't play in his game. And I don't think Drake May played in the bowl game, right? So you saw Penix and you saw Bo Nix on Monday afternoon in various games. Bo Nix looked legit, right? Like, Bo Nix is going to be good in the NFL. Like, I believe that. People have been really divisive on, or divided on Nix since his time at Auburn. Gus Malzahn, I don't think really had the I'm not a huge like college football fan, so I don't really know the analogy to use, but I think Gus didn't really have a grip on Bo Nix's future and how much pressure his past held in that moment. Um, his dad went to Auburn. It was all Auburn. He was Gatorade Player of the Year as a high school kid. There was a lot of pressure on Bo Nix, and I've said that for a while. Starting as a true freshman in the SEC, especially during that time, 2019, with Bama coming off of their natties and the rise of Georgia and whatnot, and not to mention the fact that you look around that conference at the time and LSU was emerging with Joe Burrow year. So that was a really hard place for Nix to enter into. I think at Oregon he was able to be himself, and really this year he looked like an NFL pro. He looked like an NFL pro on Monday afternoon. In fact, he had enough completions on Monday afternoon to break the all-time record for single season completion percentage in the FBS, previously set by Mac Jones in 2020. which is a little bit ironic if you're thinking about the Patriots in need of a quarterback. What's even more interesting is that prior to prior to Monday, the Pats had the single season passing yards leader in Bailey Zappi at the FBS and the single season completion percentage uh, leader at the FBS in Mac Jones. And yet, it's not a secret in Patriots Nation that they need a new quarterback. So it doesn't always, college success doesn't always equal pro success. That's why, it's really hard to look at statistics or at this or that and predict who somebody is going to be. But what I will say about Nix and Penix, the IX meter is high here in New England. Roman numeral 9. Belichick's boat, by the way, is named 8 rings. It's interesting that IX could be the ending of the last name of the next two possible big prospects we talk about in the next few months. Considering Belichick's boat is named VII rings, or excuse me, VIII rings. Now you've got maybe an IX rings in the future, possibly because of these guys, or possibly not, due to Belichick probably being out the door. But we'll talk about that at the end. But either way, guys, I went on a little bit of a tangent there. Bo Nix and Michael Penix, what we saw is that experience matters in college football just as much as it matters in any other sport. Bo Nix and Michael Penix have played a lot of football. JJ McCarthy has played a lot of football over his college tenure. And they're all three of them are going to be draft eligible. And all three of them's teams look like among the best in the country as a result of their play. And I think Nix has started 60 games as a collegiate pro. Now, granted, that's been since the 2019 season. And that's been due to, redshirting and the COVID extra eligibility and all that stuff. But it matters. It matters. And look, Drake May's played what, 30 games as a as a college starter. I don't know if that's a lot enough. Excuse me. He's not. I don't even think he wasn't the best quarterback in the ACC this year. That was certainly Jordan Travis prior to the injury. ACC quarterback Sam Howell, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett. I mean, not everyone's going to be Deshaun or Trevor Lawrence from Clemson, but I'm not sold on Drake May. So that's just, and then Caleb Williams. I don't think he was the third best. He's certainly not in the top two in his conference. That was Nix and Penix, of course, with Washington and Oregon. I don't think Caleb Williams is maybe the third or fourth best quarterback in his conference. You can make a argument about Utah's QB as well. And we saw that dude for USC who played in replacement of Caleb Williams. He went off. I forget his name. It was, kind of a bland name there. Miller something, Mitchell something, Miles something. Honestly, I forget. I'm not going to look it up. But he went off in his bowl game. So that's just something I'll put out there in the ether. If you're all jazzed up about Drake May and Caleb Williams, just remember, guys, I said I like Bo Nix, I like Michael Penix. Jaden Daniels, I liked him, but I mean, he won the Heisman. He had nothing to prove this year. Don't get me wrong, but would have been nice to see him in a bowl game. That's all. All right, moving on here. There will be a lot of things in 2024 to talk about. The Red Sox will be one of them. I will talk about them a lot in 2024. But one thing I haven't yet talked about is the Chris Sale trade. That broke on Saturday afternoon, on the December 30th. And, my first reaction was I was a little bit gutted. It's no secret to those of you who listen to this program on a frequent basis that I am a Chris Sale defender. I usually find myself in the corner of Boston sports with the take that nobody really has the courage to sort of say because they're afraid of being like laughed at or whatever. I'm sometimes that guy. Like I was a Mac Jones guy. I was a Chris Sale contract defender. Um, I am sort of not a huge fan of the moves being made by Heim in 2021 when everyone else was all jazzed up about that. I wasn't really on that train. Um, so especially with the Red Sox, I tend to have the knives come out for me with my Red Sox takes. But one thing I will say about this Chris Sale trade is, look, you can say that it was a good trade to get something for Chris Sale given his age, contract situation, and injury history. I I'm completely in agreement with that. It was a solid acquisition to get Von Grissom. Solid acquisition to get something that the Braves had that they were willing to part for Chris Sale. But here's where I begin to divert. All of that depends on what Von Grissom is, right, guys? Because one thing that I think is getting lost is there was cash considerations being swapped around between the Sox and Braves. There we gave him Chris Sale and cash. All right. Then they went and signed Chris Sale to a extension, right? 19 million over 2 years. I think we're ending up it's ending up where the Braves are pretty much only giving Chris Sale $2 million this year. And they're going out to try and win a World Series. I think the Braves 2021 World Series win was great. Excuse me, 2022. Wait, was that 21 or 22? 2021. I think the Braves 2021 World Series win was great, but they've sort of underachieved since. Freddie Freeman's left. Ronald Acuna had that great year, but the Braves sort of need to keep it going here. They've got the band together. Make no mistake, they weren't trying to do the Red Sox a favor by taking Chris Sale off our hands. So that's sort of where I divert. Is look, it's you can say and be happy that the Sox got something for Chris Sale, considering his age, contract situation, and injury history. I get it. But can we also acknowledge that the one need the Red Sox really had was starting pitching? And whether or not Chris Sale was ever going to, throw 170 innings for you again or strike out 300 dudes for you again is, a different story, considering the Red Sox have been fielding a 4A pitching rotation for the better half of 5 years. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you're under the assumption that you got some great deal, when in reality, Chris waived his no trade clause to go to Atlanta. If you were trying to trade him to the Marlins, maybe he would have done that because he's from Florida. Bad example. But if you're trying to trade him to, the Brewers, who you've dealt with in recent years, Chris Sale's not waiving his no trade to go play in Milwaukee. All right. Atlanta is a team that has studs. Atlanta is a team that he's from the Southeast. He's from the Gulf Coast of Florida, I believe. So maybe he grew up a Braves fan prior to the Rays existing. I don't really know. That's not important. What's important is that Chris saw an opportunity to go win, and he said that he did try to do the Red Sox a solid, considering how great they were with his injury rehab, and that they invested in him, and he never really lived up to the expectation. That was very honest and open of him to say in his introductory conference in Atlanta. So he might have done you a solid, but it's not like, and you might have done the Braves a solid by giving them some cash, but what are the Red Sox getting out of this deal? Okay, they're getting Von Grissom out of this deal, which leads me back to my first point. If you want to be jazzed up about this trade, fine, but it all depends on, is Von Grissom good? Because if he's really good, and he, quote, had nowhere to go in Atlanta, obviously because of the talent they have in their system right now, including in established players like Ozzy Albies. It was going to be hard for Grissom to, you know, grab a hold of a spot there. But even if they're trying to do Von Grissom a favor by giving him a chance to play in Boston, if they really wanted him so much and really liked him and he was really that good, would they have dealt him for Chris Sale? That's a good question. Did we think Yoan Moncada was very good? Is that why we dealt him for Chris Sale all those years ago, given different circumstance, a different time? But Red Sox dealt Yoan Moncada there because they knew Rafael Devers was better. Right? They knew Rafael Devers was going to be their third baseman of the future. And the writing was on the wall that there wasn't going to be a place for Yoan Moncada. But the Red Sox had invested a lot of money into Yoan Moncada in the winter of 2015. And he basically played like a year and a half of, minor league ball for the Sox before he was traded along with Kopech and Basabe and others to Chicago. So the Red Sox are basically selling low on Chris Sale, right? Obviously, Chris Sale's value isn't what it was in 2016. That's not what I'm not trying to make that comparison. But I just will point out that with Sale, if your big need was pitching and he was heading into the last year of his deal, sure, you were going to get more out of him. You were going to get more out of him in the offseason when he's had a healthy offseason than you would possibly if he gets hurt in June and you can't deal him in July anymore as a rental. I get all that. I understand the economics. But if your number one need is pitching, which is all I've heard, I've seen 1,000 different 5-man rotation fantasy blueprints for Red Sox fans. They used to all include Chris Sale until like 6 days ago. So we all were sort of acknowledging that he was going to be on the staff. Now that's just another hole you have to fill. Which is easier to find? A top of the rotation caliber Chris Sale type starting pitcher, which even given his injuries, we saw last year he still has that capability. Or is it a second baseman who isn't even wanted by the team that developed him and thought he would be a future piece for them? It's essentially like when we traded Michael Chavis. What's different between Von Grissom and Michael Chavis? I don't have their stats in front of me. Somebody's probably yelling down my ear about how Von Grissom would play better in AAA and that Gwinnett isn't a great park for, for hitters and all this stuff, and how he's going to love his. This is what I always love. His swing is tailor-made for Fenway. All right, great. I hope he's good. I really do. But don't make a mistake in thinking that the Red Sox won this trade, because right now they didn't. They traded a starting pitcher with question marks, namely health, and are still paying him, by the way, to an Atlanta team that wants to win. He waived his no move to go there. And now you are in return another player with question marks. So you didn't actually win the trade, all right? We won't know it. It all depends on how Grissom is. And I get it. There's risk in everybody. But, what it looks like to me is the Braves were looking to deal a prospect for a pitcher, and they did it. It's about time the Sox do that now. Like Nick York, I heard for years, Nick York is going to be the second baseman of the future. Well, now, so is Von Grissom or Nick York going to be the second baseman of the future? What about Marcelo Meyer? He's hurt this year. My number one qualm with this trade, and I haven't even gotten to the discussion about what I've always said about they made the right move with the extension at the time with the information they had. I get it. He was a walking Tommy John waiting to happen, but hindsight's 2020. In 2020, if he had left the same offseason as Mookie, if they had moved him, or if he had left in the offseason, or what have you, or if he had left in free agency and you lost him and Mookie in the same year, not to mention Bogarts a year and a half later, then, or 2.5 years later, the Sox fan base would have lost their mind, especially if Chris Sale pitched well in 2019. They didn't know that in spring training, all right? We didn't know there was going to be a global pandemic. We didn't know he was going to fall off his bike or do all those things or get hit by a finger at Yankee Stadium. All that was bad luck. What we do know is that since then, the Sox have hoarded prospects, not made big moves, promised to go full throttle, haven't. They haven't. I mean, Vaughn Grissom and Tyler O'Neill and Dick Fitz. I mean, Lucas Giolito, great. That was a good addition. That's one guy, and you basically now you've lost sales, so you're right back where you were. Let's not pretend Giolito was amazing last year. I think, I'm not going to look up the stats. Maybe I will right now. But who had more strikeouts per nine last year, Giolito or Chris Sale? So you're right back where you were. You still need a pitcher. There's still question marks in the infield. Look, is it going to be great that Pablo Reyes or Christian Arroyo isn't relied upon to play second base a lot? I won't have to listen to Rob Bradford on the first day of the year try and sell me on Christian Arroyo again because we have Vaughn Grissom now, and I don't even know if Christian Arroyo is employed. But, well, is that good? Sure. I'll give Vaughn Grissom a chance. I want him to be good. I hope he slays. Apparently, his first career home run at Fenway. All right, so maybe his tailor-made swing for Fenway will turn out to be a positive thing. But I guess with the Chris Sale trade, if you want to look back at it in a few years from now, we can reassess, just like we reassessed the trade with Chicago. But please do not explain this. Do not rank this as Craig Breslow playing 4D chess. I'm still willing to give Craig Breslow a shot, but it's becoming increasingly hard as we sit, first week of the year, 5 weeks away from spring training. And in some ways, I feel less confident about the Sox pitching staff than I did at the beginning of the offseason, especially with the talk now that they're going to trade Kenley Jansen to make room for Teoscar Hernandez. Look, Teoscar Hernandez, good year with Seattle, some good years with Toronto, seems like a good player. I don't know if he's your answer. But anyway, the 2024 Red Sox will be something to keep an eye on. I'm still going to follow. I just think, we should temper ourselves here before we all get jazzed up about Vaughn Grissom because he has a cute swing that we saw on TikTok. I'm just gonna, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be honest with you guys because there's a lot of Red Sox fans out there, a lot of Red Sox accounts on Twitter that will blow smoke up your ass about every single move being amazing and that they're going to be great. And the truth of the matter is that until the Red Sox show me a reason to believe, I'm going to be skeptical. The opposite of love, it's not hate, it's indifference. I'm not hating on the Red Sox, and I'm certainly not indifferent. I love this team, and it's because I want them to succeed that I am critical. It's not because I like dumping on them. I don't. I would love to talk about how I think they could compete for an AL East title, how I think they're among the 3 best teams in the American League. Those are conversations we had 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when we made deals like to get Chris Sale and Craig Kimbrell. Like when we went out and spent money on guys like David Price or Chris Young or JD Martinez. Or even further back, when we had Theo Epstein in charge, who, if somebody went out, if like the Yankees and got Juan Soto, we would go out the next day and get somebody like Shohei Ohtani, because that's what used to happen. That's what used to happen when Fenway Sports Group cared about their baseball team and didn't use their baseball team as a cash cow for their other investments like the PGA, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Liverpool. So my prediction for the Red Sox in 2024 is pretty simple. I can't make one because the team has so many holes and question marks, and we're so far away from spring training, but yet so close, that I have no idea what to think about this team. That said, I asked my listeners on New Year's Eve to make their best sports predictions of 2024. And I I was going to offer one myself. I think I made one a couple weeks ago. I think my big prediction for 2024 is that maybe on the college football front, retreating back for a moment, there's still going to be drama about the playoff. Because instead of arguing over who gets the 4 spot, we're going to argue about who gets the 11 and 12 spot. So that's still going to exist. In baseball, the Dodgers, do they win the World Series? Or are you taking the Dodgers or the field to win the World Series? I'll take the field. Hockey, I think the Rangers win the President's Trophy, but lose and continue that curse in the postseason, despite Jonathan Quick's discovery of the Fountain of Youth. Basketball, I don't think Denver goes back to back. Maybe I'm not a huge NBA guy, so maybe everyone's like, yeah, duh. But that's my off the cuff 2024 prediction. Olympics, I think the Olympics in Paris will flop. And here's why. This is another off the cuff prediction. NBC is going to be idiotic, and they're going to put a bunch of good programming on Peacock, and people are going to be pissed. Because in the age of social media and the fact that Paris isn't as far in the future as Beijing, meaning that you will accidentally find out what happened because it's only like 6 or something hours in the future and you're on Twitter, but because Peacock is where it's live and it's not on NBC till 7 p.m., you're going to miss what happened and you're going to find spoilers on Twitter or Facebook or something, and it's going to flop because they're going to get greedy and they're going to put things on Peacock. That's my Olympic take for 2024. Um, Premier League take. Ooh, I still think Liverpool. I think Liverpool wins the league. They'll make John Henry very happy. Yeah. All right, I'm going to stick with those. All right, we'll come back and revisit those in a year or so. But my listeners, you guys jumped in too. I appreciate it. Look, it's going to look pretty good. Some of you are probably. But let's go ahead and read these through. I promised I'd read them on air to everybody. I got a handful. Matt says the Patriots draft a defensive lineman with their second pick overall. He's probably being facetious, knowing him, but I don't even know who the number 1 edge guy is. If you want to say, I think there's a dude from Georgia. Maybe, yeah, there's probably a dude from Georgia in the top, 15 who's a defensive player. I can't think of who the number 1 edge guy is. So I'm not going to look that up right now, but just, hey, maybe the Pats grab them. I don't think the Pats are going to end up with the 2 pick, but we'll get to them in their game on Sunday in a second. Cam says the LA Dodgers will not win the NL West. All right. So I was just saying Dodgers are the field. Cam doesn't think they're going to win the NL West. Now they could still win the World Series given the wild card situation and all that. Michael says the Pats sign Russell Wilson after he's cut, then draft Marvin Harrison Jr., and then develop a beast offensive line and have a winning record next season. That sounds like a great blueprint. Look, I think Russ is tremendously undervalued right now. I don't understand what's going on. I think it's more of an interpersonal thing between Sean Payton, and the team and the contract and all that. Because, like, Russ, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. If the Pats had a quarterback this year who threw 26 touchdowns and 8 picks, they'd probably be a playoff team, right? I mean, they probably would. Now, are Sutton and Judy better than, you know, an injured Kendrick Bourne and Pop Douglas and Devontae Parker? Yeah, they are. But, you know, I, I think Hunter Henry with Russ Wilson and the backs that the Pats had this year, I think that would have been a solid, um, solid team. Is that a recipe for success next year? I don't know. It depends on who the coach is. Because if Russ can't get along with um, Sean Payton, I'm not sure he's going to get along with Bill Belichick if Belichick is here. Uh, Glenn says Mets will make the playoffs. Possibly. Um, the Mets are going to have some. They're kind of like the Red Sox. They had to sell off some money, some big pitchers with big money to try and get stuff for them. But you know they still got Pete Alonso and some guys in that lineup. Um, I think the Mets could mess around. Look, baseball's weird. Baseball is so weird. Did anybody see the Diamondbacks making the World Series? I did not. Rory says Vaughn Grissom breaks out at second base for the Red Sox. Lucas Giolito has a bounce back season and returns to 2021 form. Both of those things, look, I know I just criticized Grisham and Giolito. If that happens, I'd be doing cartwheels. Look, Vaughn Grissom does have potential, and Giolito, we've saw what he did in 2021. But don't forget that White Sox team in 2021. I thought they were going to go to the World Series. They ended up flaming out so hot, it was like, I'm not going to try and make an analogy, never mind. But anyway, Rory's point, look, if it happens and his prediction comes true, I'll be ecstatic. Jack says B's and C's win their cup finals in the NBA finals. Again, I would do cartwheels. That's a bold prediction. I did ask for bold. If the Bruins win the Stanley Cup this year, I will literally, I will literally be the happiest person in the world for like a 2 week span, and I'll probably have to take out like a third credit card to pay for all the Stanley Cup merch I'll want to buy. Um, if they win the cup, I will be over the moon. I will come on this program and weep if the Bruins win the Stanley Cup. And if the Celtics win the NBA Finals, that would be pretty cool because, as I said before the holidays, they could stop using the phrase cup or, excuse me, championship or bust because they will have finally won a championship um, with this group. That would be huge for Missoula. I like Missoula. I like Tatum. Okay. Brown's all right. I like Porzingis. Um, Al Horford, I like. Drew Holiday, he's coming back. I like him. So, I mean, I'd be happy for the Celtics, but I'd be over the moon if the Bruins won the Stanley Cup. Jack also says Red Sox will finish in last again. So Jack and Rory are sort of on separate fields here. Rory is very positive about the Red Sox. Jack is negative. Um, Look, if the Red Sox finish in last again, I wouldn't be surprised because the Orioles still have a lot of young studs. Toronto's good still. And then Tampa always finds a way to be relevant in the mix. Excuse me. And then finally, the Yankees with Soto and the moves they've made. That's a scary combination in the AL East. So I would not be surprised if that's the case. Jack's last prediction is the Pats draft Drake May and keep Belichick. Well, if the Pats draft Drake May, I'll invest in Drake May the same way I invested in Mac Jones. I'll look at it objectively. I'll look at his college body of work. I'll make a determination after training camp about whether or not he should start um, in the uh, in the regular season in the first few weeks or week one or at the end of the year, whatever. And I'll be in and I'll look at it objectively. I was objective on Mac Jones. I really was, guys. Um, I paid attention to the data. I looked at numbers. He had similar stats to Drew Brees and Josh Allen through his first 2 years. Um, and I was looking forward to the potential. What happened this year is a story I think we'll have a lot of time to dissect in the off season. But It's pretty clear now that Mac Jones is not the future for the New England Patriots. It's just not the future. And that's okay because and I admitted that because that's what I saw in front of me. I wasn't trying to make a hot take. I wasn't trying to win an argument, and I wasn't trying to, you know, satisfy my college football biases that I walked in with. Um, so I think that Mac Jones' career in New England is over. And if they draft Drake May and keep Bill, we'll see. We'll see what could happen. I don't think they'll keep Belichick at this point, considering what's happened this week. We'll get to that there in just a second. But if they have the 3 pick or the 2 pick and Drake May's sitting there, after all these people have said Drake May looks the part of a quarterback and whatnot, sure, go for it. But he could very well likely be Sam Darnold or, Justin Rose or whatever that guy's. No, Justin Rose plays golf. Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen. He could very well be one of those guys. So we'll just have to wait and see. Finally, Mark says Red Sox missed the playoffs and the Orioles win the pennant. So the Orioles winning the pennant, I would not rule that out. Mark's got a point. If you think about it, as I said, the Orioles got a lot of young studs. They went and got Craig Kimbrell. They're trying, right? And like we saw Texas kind of ascend with a bunch of young players last year. Same thing could happen with a team like Baltimore. They could ascend in a similar way and find themselves in the ALCS in a very comparable manner to what the Rangers did. All right, and then as far as the Red Sox missing the playoffs, look, I just said along to Jack's point, if the Sox are in last place, they're certainly missing the playoffs, despite the fact that like half the league makes the playoffs. Yeah, I wouldn't rule that out at all. All right, so now the elephant in the room, closing out real quick here. Thanks for bearing with me in the first episode of 2024. Uh, there's a discussion about the game this Sunday. All right. If you're listening on the 7th when this comes out, then this game's today. If you're listening after the fact, then you know what happened. I think the Pats should go out and win the game. Now everyone's going to flip out and freak out and say that I'm not a real fan because it's going to hurt their draft position and that they have nothing to play for and that it, yada, 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 yada. Call me selfish, but I just want to beat the damn Jets, number one. Number two, I want the players who are going to be here next year to leave with some sort of, sure, we finished 5-12, but, next year we're probably going to have a new quarterback. We're going to have Christian Gonzalez back and Matt Judon back, and we're going to have better health, and maybe we'll compete in an AFC that I'm not as convinced is as competitive as I thought it was at the end of the year, or at the beginning of the year. What I don't want is them to lose, fire Belichick, and just get into this cycle of tanking. I think the Pats, if they win, worst case, I believe, barring a bunch of ties, they drop down to 5. You can still get one of those top 4 quarterbacks at 5. You can. Because I don't think Arizona is going to draft a quarterback. Chicago might not draft a quarterback. The Giants will probably draft a quarterback. I think we could somehow drop below. Is it the Redskins? Excuse me. Sorry, the Commanders. We could drop below the Commanders. I think they're going to look for a quarterback. But just be careful what you wish for. It's very likely, and you look back at the Texans last year. Everyone will point to the Jets muffing it with Trevor Lawrence versus Zach Wilson in 2021. But last year, the Texans won their last game and ended up with the 2 pick. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. They just bottled the number 1 pick. How'd that work out for them? They're playing in a game tomorrow with a chance to go to the playoffs. Also, the point I talked about at the beginning is college football is so not unlike the NFL that as I've said all along, you're still going to have a good chance to draft a good quarterback. And you don't know for certain if they're going to be any good. But don't lose games at the end of the year to your rival in what's probably going to be your coach's last game. Just because you want to tank. It's just what loser franchises do. Go out there, beat the Jets. The Jets got, I think, I don't even know who's going to start for the Jets tomorrow. But just go out there and win the game. Just go out there and beat the Jets. It's going to be snowy in Foxborough, and you're playing the Jets, and it's Bill Belichick's last game, probably. Remember Brady's last game 4 years ago, January 4th, 2020? We didn't know COVID was about to hit our shores, where everyone's sort of had that feeling that it was the end because you had a feeling they might lose, and you had a feeling Brady might leave, and that's exactly what happened. It was sort of that gutted feeling the day after. Look, if you want to move on from Belichick, fine. I've said I think he's a good, not great coach without Tom Brady. But it doesn't seem like Robert Kraft has made a decision. A final decision, because there's been leaks of a meeting next week. Well, if there's leaks of a meeting, then that means that it's not a meeting where Belichick's going to get fired. I don't think. I think it's a meeting where Belichick's going to have to make his case to stay, and Kraft could change his mind. So in that way, Kraft hasn't made up his mind if it's willing to be changed. So remember that feeling though of it's gutted, you're gutted, and you just you it's the end of an era. It's gonna be snowy. It could be Belichick's last game. You're gonna play the Jets. You're at Gillette. It's January. Treat it like a playoff game. Go out there, beat the Jets in the snow. Have some fun. Have some pride. Be a Patriots fan. If you're going to the game, drive safe. Go out there. Be loud. Stop trying to win an argument on Twitter. Or be smarter at the water cooler when you talk about, oh, well, they're actually, because if they lose, they're going to draft second instead of third or fourth. Don't be that guy. That's what loser franchises do. That's what the Jaguars did for 15 years. They're not even guaranteed a playoff spot tomorrow. How many times did they draft number 1 overall? They drafted probably the most pro-ready, anointed quarterback in college football since Andrew Luck when they grabbed Trevor Lawrence in 2021. They've got 1 playoff win to show for it, not to mention all those times before then that they drafted. And look, people will say, yeah, well, if they had lost more, maybe they would have, drafted somebody better than Blake Bortles. Look, I get it. But how many times did the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Arizona Cardinals, like Arizona Cardinals, does anybody think Kyler Murray's amazing? No. Did everybody tell me in 2019 that the Arizona needed to tank for Kyler? Yeah. Does anybody think that Justin Fields is great 3 years in? Look, Tua's good. Joe Burrow's good. But nothing in the NFL is guaranteed. So just sort of think about that if you're like all jazzed up about a pick that's better. Bill Belichick won 6 Super Bowls here. Whether you want the guy to get fired or not, let him coach a game. Root for him one more time. One more time. He won 6 rings here. Root for him one more time against the Jets, the team that he screwed over to come here and win those titles. Do it. It's not hard. Look, I don't love Bailey Zappi. I don't love this team. This team has let me down since Tom Brady left. I'm still going to root for the Patriots tomorrow against the damn Jets. I'm not going to pretend to be like happy that they lost because, oh my God, now they can draft Drake May, who played 30 games at the University of North Carolina, and his team sucked this year. I'm so excited. So just think about that. All right. And look, if you're listening and they've won the game or lost the game, then this is all a moot point. But I guess that's just what I'll point out is it's in the snow. Bill Belichick, possible last game. And we'll know. We'll know. I think we'll know in a week what the future holds a little bit, and at least in the coaching realm. And then we can move on to talking about the draft position and the quarterback and this and that. But just enjoy it. Look, I said this the night that they lost to the Titans in January 2020, Brady's last game. I said, if this truly is the end, it's sad, but I've had so much joy given to me by this team over my lifetime that there's not a look, this year sucked. But it's not a it's not a foregone conclusion in life that you're ever going to be happier because of a decision that you've made or because of an outcome of something. So while it's there, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. We're playing the Jets. Hopefully, it's the last time they wear those god awful blue uniforms. Like, if they want to make any change in the offseason, I would be happy with. I don't care if they draft Timmy Stevens from Rentham High, as long as they get rid of those damn blue on blue uniforms. But just watch. I'll go out. They'll probably wear them tomorrow. I'll watch them. It'll be fun. It'll be snowy. Christian Barmore will probably sack the Jets quarterback, roll and then do a snow angel. That'll be fun. Have fun. It's a meaningless game. The Jets don't need to win it. We don't need to win it. Belichick. In the past, I've joked that maybe if they ever played the Jets in the last game, Belichick would throw the game to keep the Jets out of the playoffs or to ruin the Jets draft pick or something like that. But tomorrow, just enjoy the Pats game one more time if we can. Look, if it's a crappy game and if you've listening now and you know it's a crappy game, this probably sounds funny. But just see it. I mean, the last time the Jets came to Foxborough, the Pats had a walk-off punt return. How fun was that? The year before, we absolutely pantsed them at home with Mac. It's probably one of the Mac's best games as a Patriot. The year before that, it was I think it was Cam's last game, right? Cam Newton had fun. They threw the ball over the yard. I think it was Devin Asiasi even scored a touchdown. 2019 against the Jets, I can't remember. I think that was the game that Belichick tried to put in Stidham for a second and then realized that Jared Stidham wasn't great when he threw a pick six and that we needed Brady back in the game to seal the win. But joking aside, like, just enjoy. Foxborough is a special place. It is. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, as I heard this week, basically built an economy around a small town in the farmland of Massachusetts. Robert Kraft built that too. And ultimately, the decision on what happens for the future of this franchise is on his shoulders. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Home Field Advantage, our first of the year. Thanks for tuning in with us. We'll try and have Diesel and Cam join us for an NFL playoff preview sometime in the next week prior to next Saturday's games. Look forward to having you tune into that. It's going to be a great time. Happy to have 2024 underway. If you're listening in the car, on the road during this snowy weekend in New England, hope you're being safe. If you're listening around the country and around the world in a warm part, I hope you're enjoying some sunshine for all us chowderheads up here. But until next time, my name is Will Highland. You've been listening to Home Field Advantage.